Welcome to Don't Be Caged by Your Age, a podcast devoted to dissolving ageist beliefs and fears and providing pathways for you to repurpose, reimagine, and reinvent your decades of lived experiences. I'm your host, Ande Lyons, celebrating my 67th year of living, and I know you'll find the resources, ideas, and inspiration you need to thrive after 65. Listeners, in this episode, Phin, age 67, teaches us 3 important strategies to reframe our stories about aging. 1, a really cool mindset concept called in the making. 2, a process for redefining success after 60. And 3, how to plan for the future without sacrificing the present. All 3 will leave you with a positive perspective for aging. Stay tuned for another delicious and informative conversation. Welcome to Don't Be Caged by Your Age, Don. I'm so happy you're here to share your insights, stories, and advice with our listeners.
I'm happy to be here too.
Don, before we dive into your background and talking about ageism and the stories we tell ourselves about aging, share with us, what is your age and where are you from?
My age is 67. I grew up in New York City.
Don, please share just a few surprising, fun, wild stories from your career and life to give us a flavor of where you have been and who you are.
I've had a real varied story, so that would take a while. So I'll have to give you the snapshot of it. Things were wild growing up in the 70s in New York. I went to a good school there, Bronx High School of Science. But then I became a bit of a wild man and got uninvited to my first 2 colleges. And had been working at a law firm in Manhattan for 5 summers, got fired from that. And then at 20, I ended up getting a job at Park Hotel teaching rich women and dancers, ballet dancers, how to swim, because I was the captain of my swim team. And I got a job working 3 nights a week at Studio 54. Now, my mom was raising me and my 2 younger sisters. So basically, she just had to ignore me at that point because she had no control over me. I was doing my own thing, doing whatever I wanted. And that got a little bit out of control. And my uncle takes me to lunch down in Chinatown. He says, how'd you like to go work on a tuna boat in San Diego? Now, I had always wanted to go to California. And I'm like, sure. So it was October. It was getting cold in New York. My buddies were back in college. I wasn't, I was having a wild time. But I said, yeah, I'll go to California. And I never came back. And so I've been out here in San Diego ever since. I've got my 3 sons here and 4 grandkids here.
Oh my gosh, what a delicious story. You went on to get several degrees, right?
I straightened out in my act on a tuna boat. There's no partying in the middle of the ocean. And, some guys end up in the Navy for that reason. I ended up on a tuna boat. And it was a great experience. It really was. It was a less than 1 full year, but it was an amazing experience. And I ended up down in Panama and all sorts of things. And then I went back to college, got straight A's because I wanted to go to law school. And part of that is the whole story of who you're supposed to be. And I wanted to make my mom proud. And back in the day, if you were going to be super son, become my son the lawyer, my son the doctor. And so I became my son the lawyer.
Oh, you are a good son.
Well, then it was also part of the messaging back then. And this is what all leads into that story stuff, that if you were going to be a good person, you would represent us and not the man. The whole idea in the 70s, overthrow the man, right? So I started as plaintiff's counsel in the employment arena, and I did some of the first sexual harassment and first discrimination and first glass ceiling cases. And at the end of my career, litigation career, I was representing nuclear power plant whistleblowers. And that's when my life became a John Grisham novel. And that ended up that 70 plus hours a week after week, year after year, ended up killing the first marriage where I had the 2 young boys, and then burnt me out of the career. And by the time I was 41, I had quit litigation.
I understand completely. I want to thank you right now for being right there in the middle, not just with the whistleblowers, but for those of us who are very familiar with sexual harassment in the workplace and discrimination in the workplace. Thank you for being such a great ally.
That's the warrior work that I did. And the thing I finally realized when I got behind, that's when I started opening up to the story, because what happens is when your story catches up to your reality, you have a midlife crisis. And that generally happens in 40s or around then, right? But now what we're having is our story around retirement is catching up to our reality around retirement, and we're having another crisis. I see that happening all over the place.
And today, what are you up to? Let listeners know.
I eventually built an HR company. I ran that as a lifestyle business. For 12 years, I decided I would never work over 40 hours a week again, would never allow my employees to work over 40 hours a week again. And that's when I really learned about time management through those years and productivity. I do a lot of workshops for CEOs. So I get 15 CEOs for half a day from the Visage organization. I've done that 600 times. So I'm in front of business owners all the time. When last year is top 25 out of 900 speakers in the organization. So I get in front of them a lot, and I learn from those people a lot. And one thing I see is how they're affected by their own stories, especially when their whole life is built up around building a business. And now they're in their 70s and their spouse might want to spend more time traveling, but they don't know how to unhinge from the business. They don't know how to retire and go home. As the saying goes, I married you for better or worse, but not for lunch, and it can be a real challenge, right?
They get caught on a hamster wheel, right? And they don't know how to do
Yeah. And
that.
they've been so focused on doing one thing well that they've sacrificed a lot of other things in the process. And that is not uncommon with highly excellent people. They have to block out everything and just focus on what they do best. That's a real challenge. I've been working with these very wealthy multi-generation families, and you see the transition from generation to generation in those families. Very difficult transition.
How do you give
from
up
both.
the reins? You want to hand the reins over to your son or daughter, right? But then all of a sudden it's, wait a minute, I've been in this role as a
And
leader
then when you
and I
do it
am
yourself, I lost control. I have no control. Who am I? And you get into that now. Who am I? Some people run right after that. They know exactly what they want to do and they can't wait to do it. And they have very successful retirements. Other people just get stymied right there because they haven't done any planning or thinking about it because they've been really so in the moment. And that's always a challenge of where do we put our story? So one of the very interesting, when I was studying all about time, so I've done these 3-year deep dives, all right? And I read like crazy. And I've read over 1,000 books. And I'll read like crazy in an area for 3 years. And I did that for time. And I ended up writing 2 books around it. But one of the interesting things I learned about time is from a book called The Time Paradox, that we sit either in the past, the present, or the future. And that conversation is positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. And they give what the profile of a healthy management of your time perspective, right? And as you can imagine, you should be more present than anything else. And you want to be positive in all 3 areas. So when you look at it, past positive, present positive, future positive, but I am overweighted to the future. So I spend too much time worrying about the future, which produces anxiety in me. Okay. So I know that about myself, and you can look at that. I challenge anybody to look at that. There's some people that I know very intimately that spent way too much time in the past and can't let go of that. All right. And everything is
and
about the past, and you can't move forward if you spend most of your time in the past. One reason I quit litigation is I learned that the people who I saved, the victims that I saved, put money in their pockets and 3 years of broke. And money just sanctified their victimologies, just made them more of who they already were. And instead of learning the lessons and seeing how do I become responsible in this situation and not allow other people to manage my life, until they got that lesson, they'd be in that continuous cycle of victim being saved, victim being saved. And I said, this doesn't benefit you. It doesn't benefit me. I'm out. And that's one reason why I quit. I know that I've had to make sure that I appropriately plan for the future. So I have my trust documents. I have my financial planner has said, okay, this is what you can do in your retirement, and here's the variables. So I have all the logical checklist things that I can do, I've done, which allows me to let go logically, right? So I always divide stuff, logic, emotional, right? So a checklist helps you make sure you do things logically. I ask, have I done everything I need to do to be responsible to myself in the future? Okay, that's the only logical question I ask. Have I done everything I need to do to be responsible to myself for my future? All right. having financial plans and things like that, taking care of health and diet and all those things, right? Then the other side of the equation is the fear factor.
Right.
What is my fear about the future? The emotional fear around it. Is there an emotional fear because logically you don't have enough money to retire on, okay? And you'll never have very much money. You're going to be in financial stress the rest of your life. That's what the story is telling you. And I got to think maybe I'm going to move to Mexico or something like that. And there's a lot of people in that situation. I said, I just was looking at the statistics. The median amount of retirement funds of somebody who's 65 right now is $165,000. How do you live on that? So that means half of the people have less than that.
And Social Security, your check is not going to be enough to help
Right. They even
support
tell
that.
you, they give you a little warning, you're not going to get all of this. People say, well, you're going to get this when you retire, but maybe the disclaimer, not all of it. Right. It's crazy. Right. It's crazy.
It's really tough and it's very fear evoking. And I think too that as we are aging out, we've got a lot on our plate. It's interesting too, as folks who are our age and we look at what has been represented for retirement, what we grew up with. And certainly in my family, my father was at the same gig for 35 years, retired, had a pension. And for many of us, that's what we saw as an example of what we're going to do. But then we see folks living well into their 80s, early 90s. And it's like, wow, if you stop working at 65, how do you keep going? Because the stories that I keep seeing crop up, Don, are that people are saying, I'm too old. I can't learn new skills. I can't learn a new technology. And then, of course, I really miss the connection, the community I had at work. I miss that visibility. I even miss the fights and, and all the things that went
I need
on.
a little drama in my life, come on. I'll go to work and get some drama. What the heck?
But what are the stories that you're seeing folks tell themselves that prevent them?
I think that there's a recognition and awareness that the story is rapidly changing. And it's really interesting. So my dad is 90 and living in the villages. Okay. That is the icon of that pension story because the vast majority of the villages is funded by pensions. People coming
Yes.
out of Midwest manufacturing, those types of jobs and having a pension. And as you know, there's less and less pensions out there. So it's going to be interesting to see people with pensions are worth more than it. They might have 165 saved, but they got a pension and Social Security, right?
Right.
So that's a lot different than somebody who's got the 165 and Social Security and no pension, which is going to be more and more people coming
Oh,
into
yeah.
retirement, right? Because those pensions are disappearing, right? And their automatic savings is disappearing. So if they haven't done automatic savings into a mortgage, then they're going to be really in a difficult situation, right?
Right.
And so I think everybody's realizing that that story is coming to an end for many people, not all people, for many people. Plenty of firemen, plenty of
Te-
policemen, plenty of city
teachers.
workers with nice
Hmm.
pensions, and just hope that the pension system doesn't go bankrupt and you're good, right? A lot of other people are realizing that, number one, like me, in order to maintain the lifestyle I want, I have to keep working despite having some savings, right? And number two, I want to keep working. I love what I do. I just don't want to kill myself doing it. And so
Right.
nowadays, maybe I put in a 30-hour week and I'm really happy about that. And I travel more and I work out more and I play more and I do those types of things. But I still, last year, I had one of my best years in 10 years at 67
Congratulations, Don.
without
That's
killing
tremendous.
myself, without
And
killing
Don,
myself.
when you were looking ahead, being the anxious person that you are, when you were in your 50s looking ahead to this time period, did you think this is what you would have been doing and created for yourself?
At that point, once I got really intentional about designing my story. So you either have a story by default. I call it being gifted to you.
Hmm.
Your parents gift it to you, society gift it to you, your buddies gift it to your friends, social media gifts it to you versus one that you've declared for yourself and designed for yourself. And so I finally got to the point of designing what I want to do. And I've been literally doing that. And I don't like to do just one thing. So I literally do about 8 different things, maybe 7 different things.
Wow. Listeners, what are your thoughts about all this? What are some of the stories you tell yourself? If you're willing to share them, please leave your comments over on Don't Be Caged by Your Age's LinkedIn or Instagram feeds, okay? Because we're here to support each other as we figure out how to thrive after 65. We need to hold hands while we walk through this time in our lives. So I loved your intentionalness. I don't even know if that's a word, intentional.
Yeah, no, it's a good word.
Intentionalness around planning for your future, planning, and rather than holding your future self hostage, you're giving it amplification, you're giving it intention.
Let me share a couple things. In my workshops, I talk about how do we get out of our victimology. And I don't care if you're a CEO of a Fortune 500 company or you're a mom of 3 kids and you're staying home. We all have a victimology someplace. And the 3 words that I use are coax, like a pat on a baby's butt, encourage, and inspire. And one thing I realized is I stay in the present. The power is in the present. And I just ask myself, what's the most important thing I need to do right now? That's it. And I might channel my inner David Goggins and say, do the hard thing, All right. So what's the hard thing I need to do right now? And so I build a muscle around staying in the present and doing what needs to be done in the present. One thing I learned from time management is I should have that on my calendar already. I really live off of my calendar instead of a to-do list, because at this point, like you and I, we still have a bunch of meetings. What do you do in between those meetings? What you feel like doing in between those meetings? What do I feel like doing on that list as opposed to what you should be doing? So one of the biggest things I learned about time management is put it on the calendar, do the hard thing and do it when you're supposed to, right? It's pretty disciplined about
Yeah.
doing that. Okay.
Because then you've got to go on and say, okay, so those are the hard things. Well, how do I fit in things that are fun? Because many folks are coming off 40 years of doing hard things for themselves or for a boss or for a board. And now they've got to be self directed. And that includes taking time to go for a walk, breathe in some great air, spend time with a loved one. How do they start shifting into that on their calendar?
One of the things that I've realized is we tell our story about who we're supposed to be for our family. Okay. So I'm supposed to be a successful executive for my family because I can provide for my family. I can do things for my family, but it's really your story for you. It's what you want to do for your family. And to think that that's what they want from you, I realized that that was a trap. When you're working 70 hours a week from it, and you don't see your family, that whole nonsense, I'm doing this for you, and you don't seem very grateful about it. It was like, yeah, well, maybe that's not what we want from you in the first place.
Right. A mythology, what you
Mythology.
think
It goes to
everybody
camp,
wants. Yeah.
right? I have to self-sacrifice in order to be a hero. All right. So the
Mhm.
realization that you can now go, let go instead of like this, let go of that need for self-sacrifice and being a hero for everybody else. That's the big journey at this age, right?
Right. It
And
really is. And Don, you talk about emotional energy and
mhm.
leveraging that for transitioning into new adventures and careers. Can you talk a little bit about that? What does that mean? What does
Sure.
that look like? What does that feel like?
So remember I said
Absolutely.
coax, encourage, and inspire. So when I coax
Yeah.
myself, I ask, what do I need to do now? One step
Yep.
right now. It's not Phil Stutz has his little movie, he goes little dot, little dot, little dot. That's step, step, step. It's just one step at a time. You don't get overwhelmed with all of it, right? The second word is encourage, and we encourage ourselves by finding the good in ourselves, or finding that we encourage others by finding the good in other people. That's how you make yourself feel good about yourself. That's how you make other people feel good about themselves. We spend more self-talk and beating ourselves up than anybody would dare do to us. And so, how are you talking encouragement to yourself? David Goggins talks about your cookie jars, all your little wins. You have to pull out of that cookie jar and find the good in you to use that energy, right?
Right.
And so we make ourselves feel good by finding a good in ourselves. And we have to intentionally and proactively have those conversations, right?
Right.
And the third thing is inspiring ourselves. And we have always inspired ourselves with stories. As the saying goes, facts tell, stories sell, right? So when COVID hit and I had 80 grand of speaking wiped off the calendar immediately, and a lot of fear came in. I'm like, holy moly, what am I going to do now? And so right away I said, what's this Zoom thing? All right. What's my first safe step? Learn Zoom. What's the next safe step? Learn good lighting. What's the next safe step? Learn green screen technology. What's it say? To learn two camera angles. And I got really good at doing online presentations. All right. The story that we've all been given, starting at the beginning of COVID and continuing since, is this idea of resilience, 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 resilience. So that's the story. I can take a hit and come back. I can take a punch, right? And when I do the CEO workshops, and any of you ever had one of those bozo punching bags, and everybody did, right? And I'm just like, so this is resilience.
Don is hitting himself up the side of the head, everybody.
Is that what you want to be? A punching bag? Yeah, a bamboo can take a hurricane and come back and stand back up. That's resilience. And I'm like, I never bought into the idea of wanting to be a punching bag. I just could never really wrap my emotions around that, right? And then I read one of those books that I've read that been life-changing. There's been maybe 10 books out of those 1,000 that have been life-changing. And one of them was Anti-Fragile by Nassim
Oh,
Taleb.
that's a favorite in our household for sure.
So the story I am inspiring myself with is that I am anti-fragile in the making.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So it's a beingness, it's a state. All right. And one of the traps we get into is what I call the when and then story. When I have this, then I'll do that. That keeps us in victimology. Okay. When she's finally nice to me, I'll enjoy my life. The in the making story is I'm anti-fragile in the making. I'm healthy in the making. I have great relationships in the making. So it brings you into the present, that idea of in the making. When I was in law school, I was a lawyer in the making. I knew the power of that story. We've all had that in the making, and we get to use that again. And so I like the idea of being anti-fragile in the making. And what makes for anti-fragility, according to Nassim, I love his metaphor. He goes, you want to be the fire that's emblazoned by the wind. And so you want to grow from chaos and disorder. I go to gym and lift weights to grow from chaos and disorder, right? I read different books to grow from new information, chaos and disorder, to jack with my brain, okay? And so we need chaos and disorder in order to force us to evolve, okay? And so what is by nature anti-fragile is nature. And how does nature exist in the world of anti-fragility? Through creativity and experimentation. So
Right.
to think that we can have it all figured out, we can do the responsible thing, but then we're still going to need our creativity and our innovation and our experimenting to find out what's going to work and not work.
Don, what I really love about the in the making, and listeners really think about this, it works on the brain. So you hear a lot of the affirmations out there, and it's putting you in the future. And it's almost like a when and then, right? Instead, when you say that in the making, your brain can wrap its neural pathways around that. So you get support then from your beautiful brain in the fact that you are in the making of figuring this out, becoming good on Zoom and learning how to talk to the camera or podcasting or on some new adventure you're going on or how you just want to reframe your life. It's very powerful, right, Don?
When I finally got it, after I quit litigation, I started an environmental not-for-profit. That's a whole nother story. It was very non-profitable, and I ended up bankrupt. Okay. I felt so humiliated. Here I am, a lawyer, a super smart guy. What the hell am I doing bankrupt? And it was really complete nonsense. And I was telling myself the one and then story. When I have money again, then I'll come out of my shell. I'll be able to show my face. And I was walking by some 14-year-old kids playing basketball with NBA jerseys on, and I got it that every one of those kids is an NBA player in the making right now. They're not doing one and then, they're in the making, just like I was in law school. I said, I've been holding myself the wrong way. I have to hold myself as a millionaire in the making. And I started to do that, and it changed how I showed up. And that, I don't think that would have happened had I not held myself that way. So now that was the coax, encouragement, and inspire. That's how we get
Right.
out of our weak energy into what
Yeah.
I call that 40-40 energy. That's how we help allow others to become their own hero by having them. One thing that keeps me young, I'm in a group helping young at-risk boys It's a group called Boys to Men. They don't sing. But it's all at-risk boys, have no father, at-risk moms in a ghetto, and we take them camping. We bring them in circles, almost like an AA meeting for them, for a safe place for them. So it's really rewarding work and keeps me in touch with that youth. Okay, so they're
Yes.
very inspiring to me. But that whole idea of I'm a successful senior in the making, that's who you are. I'm a successful senior making. How's that going to happen? One step at a time, experimenting, see what I like. I can have a plan.
Right.
I got to act out my life. Okay. You had plans when you were 25, but you acted out your life. You weren't all worried about what was going to be back then. You were in the moment more. Right. So that being able to be back in the moment more now, the emotional energy side of it. So we have these stories. We have these roles in these stories, the role of the victim, villain, or hero, and we can play all three of those roles within an hour. Okay. And these are the masks we put on. There's a distinction between the victim mentality and the true victim, the villain mentality and a true villain, the hero mentality and a true hero. Right.
Right.
So these are the masks that we wear, and they tend to be destructive when we play roles like this. The word personality is derived from the Greek word for mask. Right. And so there's an energy behind every one of these roles. And when you're talking about the victim role, there's a weak energy. Nobody plays victim with strong energy. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
only victims play with weak energy. All right. Somebody
Right.
comes into a meeting, somebody sits at the dinner, you can notice the lack of their energy, almost a depressed state. You know what's going on. They're feeling like a victim. If, however, somebody comes into a meeting all wound up, do they have to say anything, or can you just feel what's going on? You can
You
feel
can
what's going on.
definitely
Just
feel
like
it.
your dog or cat can react to your emotional energy. That's how animals deal with each other. The antelope can walk past the cheetah, but if it doesn't feel the vibe, it's okay. And so we're very sensitive in our animal natures to this vibration. And I did another 3-year deep dive after I got exposed to it, to learning about energy and physics more. So I didn't talk foo-foo nonsense. And I bring out tuning forks when I do my workshops. So I have my tuning fork here in the picture. And a tuning fork, like Tesla says, if you want to understand the universe, understand about energy and resonance and things like that. And we want to be able to resonate with other people. And my metaphor for that is you get 40% of the space, they get 40% of the space. The room in the middle is where we co-create. Okay. The Jesus was a 40%er. The Buddha was a 40%er. All right. They were never too strong with their energy. They didn't play victim games. It was just a presence that allowed other people to resonate with them. When you're a 20%er, you have really weak energy. Well, what you resonate with? Other 20%ers, other victims, you throw mutual pity parties, or you look for some 80%er to save you. Okay. So that's codependency, right?
Yeah.
And if you're too strong with your energy, even if your intentions are good, you cause the fight or flight, just like our parents did. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the energy that I talk about. And I teach people how to move from the weak energy, which is the coax, encourage, and inspire, and how to move from the strong energy about letting go, being inclusive, and having some faith that works.
Wow, that is such powerful work. How can listeners learn more about how you work with folks?
Well, first of all, I've got a website, just donfin.com. Okay. And I have produced a ridiculous amount of content, and I put it all up there. So when I sold my company, they wanted all my legal stuff, but they didn't care about my non-legal stuff. I said, what do you want me to do? They go, whatever you want, we'll do it. And I couldn't sell it because I was a non-compete. So I just put it up on my website. So there's a lot of things on there from a personal growth perspective, from an
Right.
exercise, nutrition perspective, and about the stories we tell ourselves, and my 40/40 book in PDF if you just want to download it. So there's a lot on.
That's wonderful because, folks, especially as Don talked about earlier, that we get hyper focused for years in a specific role, whether it's providing for the family or being a parent or whatever that is, understanding how to switch it and flip it up, so to speak, that you can start pursuing other avenues, no right or wrong, just staying curious, staying an observer, but helping your mindset by understanding how you operate in the world and how you can intentionally bring something into your life that would be even more meaningful and more purposeful. Because anybody will tell you, the doctors who work in the ICU, they hear the stories that I wish I had. I wish.
Absolutely. One thing that can happen as we get older is that the depression can set in, a loneliness.
Yeah.
I'm physically breaking down. And the reality is, activity has always been the greatest cure for depression. So that's just doing something. Just, I can't, well, maybe today you brush your teeth. Okay. So it's one safe step at a time. That's how we get out of that state. I want to share a couple more things. I know we're
Yeah.
getting end of time. A couple of thoughts about aging. Number one, I'll never be as young as I am today. So when I'm in my present, I have youth. Okay. When I'm here right now, I'll never be as young as I am today. So if I'm here right now, then I'm youthful. Okay. That's the reality compared to the rest of my life. I'm youthful. All right now. So that's number one. And my second thought about aging is my definition of getting old is when you spend more time in your past than in your future.
That's a really good definition. Training our brains to stay in the present. And it really does, listeners, help us stay agile, not just physically active, but in our brain and how we think and move ourselves through the world. Aging isn't for cowards. Aging requires us to step up and understand that this is what's happening. It's a gift to be this old right now, and it'll be a gift to be your age in the future. But how can we make the most of it right now without letting our own stories inside ourselves, inside our head, prevent us from pursuing activities, desires, passions, and dreams in our future? Don, have you been affected by ageism in your work? Because I know you speak and you're out there and you're training and you're still staying
No,
active.
I haven't, even though I'm way ahead of the curve on what's going on and study the future and study about AI and robotics. I did a 3-year deep dive into understanding that. I'm not viewed as somebody to talk about that. I'm too old to be the guy to talk about that. All right. But so my conversations are the deeper, more emotional conversations that come with time and wisdom. So as I kid around, these are my wisdom years. So that's where I've focused my energies.
That's right. And it's important, folks, to remember, and you'll hear these conversations in many of the episodes, that age does not define whether you can be innovative, whether you can be at the top of the technology game. It really has nothing to do with that. It's your desire and your ability that brings your deeper understanding of what you can do and who you can be as you age and work on thriving after 65. This has been a profound conversation. I love that you brought up anti-fragility. Listeners, I'm going to have links to everything that Don talked about in the show notes because he dumped a lot of really good and important information on us. But you may need to do a 3-year dive on Don's work in the world. You've given us so much great advice, and I love the framework of I'll never be as young as I am today that helps us stay present and stay joyful in our age today in this moment. I love that something
Yeah.
fierce. We're here to help each other thrive after 65, folks, and continue to take this one precious life that we've been given and really continue to glow in the world. Actually, the world needs you at whatever age or stage you're at, but we definitely need our elders. We have so much wisdom to share, and we need society to start shifting its perception about aging and stop focusing on youth centered conversations and talk about how great it is to be reaching the age where you've got the wrinkles, you've got the experience, you've got the laugh out loud moments, and now you can continue bringing that deliciousness to the world. Don, thank you for joining me and carving out time to share your unique view of the world with us.
Hey, I enjoyed it. Anytime.
It's so great to be with someone who's just a few months older than me. I love it. And listeners, remember, you have so much to give. So don't let those internalized ageist beliefs prevent you from pursuing new dreams and opportunities, no matter what age you're at. I'm so grateful you tuned in to this episode of Don't Be Caged by Your Age. Please be sure to stop by and say hi. I'm on all the platforms. I want to hear how you're doing. And until next time, I'm wishing you a delicious day everywhere you glow. Cheers from Boston. Listeners, I'm so grateful you carved out time to tune in and grab the gems from this delicious conversation. Be sure to hop on over to Don't Be Caged by Your Age on LinkedIn or Instagram to share your thoughts about ageism and unretirement. Because in this space, your age doesn't define you, it refines you. If you are inspired by a story you hear, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, share, rate, and review the podcast. To receive an alert whenever a new show is posted, please join the Don't Be Caged by Your Age newsletter. Every month, you'll receive links to the podcast and helpful resources for creating possibilities for your unretirement days. Thank you for tuning in. I am so excited to hear how you found ways to thrive after 65. Waving from Boston, cheers.